Not too loud at all.
Okay.
So the way that I roll into this is I press the recording button and we just go.
Okay.
And then I like break in with a little like welcome spiel after about the first couple minutes, and then we talk for like another 50 minutes after that. That's the format.
So it's like a cold open.
Cold open
Okay.
with hot topics.
Okay.
yours being the promo initially, because you also have a podcast.
Yeah. Are you asking me what it is?
I don't know. I'm just trying to lead you into talking about it.
Okay, I didn't know we were recording it, but so it's called Tipping the Scales, which I thought was very clever because of me and my ex co-host, but he still might be my co-host later.
That's right. Once he gets through new baby stages.
Yeah, once he gets through new baby stuff, I don't think it ends, does it? Like it's like 18 years of like caring for a child, right?
Let me tell you something, man. I just finished borrowing my mother-in-law's vehicle for the past week because my car was in the shop.
Okay.
Right? Mind you, I'm not even her biological kid, and she's still got a parent for me. So 18's not where it ends. And this is coming from somebody that has too many 10-year-olds running around the face of this earth. All right? That's
well, what I was saying was like, you're obligated at least for 18 years. After that, it's like, I guess, gravy for your kids.
Or it's more expensive. It just depends on how bad your kids are, man.
yeah, I guess so. But yeah, we just talk, like we argue about random stuff. Sometimes we talk about it if it's like too much, like if it's a topic that neither one of us wanted to pick a side on. We might just kind of agree and discuss. Recently, it's been more of a discussion just because I haven't had only attorneys on, and I think they kind of feel like the deck stack against them if I start arguing with them.
Was that like the initial idea for the podcast was to be focused like on lawyer talk and like having conversations between lawyers, or were you like always going to open it up to a wider array of folks?
Well, so the main idea was for it to always be just kind of like dumb arguments, because so my old co-host
your old former future co-host,
it's possible that he comes back, I'm not discounting it, but my old co-host and I would like have like hour, 2 hour, 3 hour conversations just arguing like nonsense. And so I was like, we should just do a podcast about this because we're already like spending all this time talking about it. We might as well have a podcast. And so it was always like,
and that's how every podcast starts.
And so it was kind of just like, if we're already doing this, like I think this is entertaining, you think it's entertaining, we might as well. Before we go further, is this like a clean?
No, you cuss as much as you want to.
Okay, all right. So one of the arguments that I can remember us having like a conversation of on the phone that we got both of our significant others involved in was whether sex is fun. Like whether it's
work. I don't know. How old are you now, Michael?
Well, okay, so I'm 27. I'm about to be
it'll
28.
be work in 3 more years. Don't worry.
Well, and so like we were like, is it fun? Is it not fun? And I was like, I don't know if fun is the right word to describe it. I think it's more of like something that you do with someone that you love. It doesn't, I mean, it can be fun, but I don't know if that's how to describe it. He's like, no, it is fun. And then his significant other, who was his girlfriend, now wife, she was like, no, I think I'd agree with Michael. I think it's like something you do. It can be fun, but it's not.
But with you, not usually, honey.
Well, and I think I made that joke because I put it there. And of course, Savannah was like, it is fun. And I was like, yes. And so it was like,
who's the best boyfriend on this phone call?
Yeah. And so then it like broke down into if everything can be described fun, then is anything fun? And it was just like 2 hours of like this philosophical conversation that originated with sex. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's phenomenal, man. All right. So you guys, you're right now you run about 40 minutes to an hour, right?
Yeah.
What are, well, hell, we'll get into some of that stuff in a little bit. You know, let me just kick over here and do what I'm supposed to do, which is an intro for episode 48 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, and we tie it all together with this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. And for episode 48, I have a wonderful human being as my guest, Mr. Michael Lennix.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Who is just finished talking about his podcast called
Tipping the Scales.
that can be found at
really like on Patreon or Apple Podcasts.
like just a couple places right now.
I mean, like I don't really want to. It's like a little bit of work. It's not a lot of work, but it is like a little bit of work to like go through the little vetting process where
So
like they make sure.
So if you have Apple Podcasts,
Or
you can
Patreon.
listen to things.
You can go. It's free on Patreon. You can.
Oh, okay.
You can give us money if you really want to, but it is free on Patreon.
You're already lawyers. You're fine. You're fine.
yeah. We'd love to not dip into our own resources, and we don't get paid as much as you think we do.
So the big question that all this stuff starts off, and I'm sure we will get back to the podcast at some point in time, but my core question that underpins the entire series of interviews that I will do until the end of time or until I die or whatever else, whichever one comes first. I'm still up in the air on that one at this point in time with the world that we live in. Is how did you come to be in Carbondale?
All right. So I actually came to be in Carbondale because of my girlfriend, mainly, who is still my girlfriend now. But about... I don't want to give a time frame because people might get mad at me for her still being my girlfriend now. But a while ago, we were like going to a Kaskaskia College, a junior college in Centralia, together. Then we got together, and then from there, like I was doing something with like architecture, like computer-aided drafting kind of stuff. And then I took like a logic course and I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer now. And so then she was like, there's a pre-law program at Carbondale. And so then I applied with her. We basically, like we didn't technically live together like the first year, but I was basically living in her apartment the first year, even though I had my own place. And then we moved in together and stayed. She went to school for theater initially, which we're in a theater right now, for lighting. And I went to school for pre-law, clearly. And then after that, she switched her major to criminology and criminal justice. And she's interested in like sentencing disparities and, you know, how like the coke to crack disparity is like so ridiculous.
It's weird that she's dating a cop now. Then
I am not a cop. I am not at all.
All right, I got it in. I got it in where I need to get it in. My joke is done. We're over. We're moving on.
Of course. Yeah. What's funny is, so my dad is a retired police officer. Yeah. But I am not a cop, nor do I ever want to be a cop. Not to say that it's like a terrible thing, but like...
I'm sure it's tough, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. I'm sure you like become desensitized to things, which leads to you not caring a lot, which leads to that being seen, which leads to people scrutinizing you more, which leads to you being on a video somewhere and losing your job.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, there are certainly people that get into it for the wrong reasons as well, and I would not want to feel like I need to defend those people.
What is it like kind of being in this world that you're in now? I mean, between both you and Savannah, and having just this broad view of the system as a whole, and being able to both work within it while scrutinizing it, while trying to move it forward, like all in tandem. Like, does it feel like a lot sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially towards like the beginning of me working where I work now, there was like, there were maybe like one or two times where I was like, is this person, like, do I feel like this person did this crime? But I mean, as attorneys and anyone who's an attorney or who is friends with an attorney or who has an attorney in their family knows you have to zealously advocate for your client.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, at the end of the day, what's supposed to happen is, and I'm not saying that this always happens, and I'm sure that it does not, in fact, but what's supposed to happen is justice is served by both attorneys moving the ball as hard as they can forward, and the judge being like, this is the right thing in this case. So ultimately, I mean, as long as the case has merit, you have to make the argument for it. And I'm sure you made the joke because I'm a prosecutor.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and might as well get that out of the out now, but I'm sure there are defense attorneys that also at least start to struggle with this. Maybe they can move past it too, but start to struggle with this, because I know that there are cases that I've handled where I'm like, it's like either like a sexual assault or like a sexual assault with a child, a murder where I have to look at the person like dying on video, where I'm like, the defendant should not be anywhere near any person. Like they need to be under the jail.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I imagine how a defense attorney would get past that is like, they still have rights, which is certainly true. Yeah. I'm not saying to get rid of those, but that's kind of the
yeah. Thank you for not advocating for getting rid of rights.
Get rid of all of the rights. You heard it here first. No rights, only prison. No. So
I mean, welcome to America. That's our new slogan. Only prison.
I think our new slogan is judge, jury, and executioner.
Oh,
on the streets. I think
that's fucking tough, man. You're not wrong though, man. And here, like, it's wild to even like here. The issue has been for so long that we haven't been able to have casual conversations about this stuff, right? It's only in the past several years that really like the casual conversation around like the injustice of the system's application of street justice, right? And street justice is not always justice, right? That and it's not always individual to individual. It is often a state individual interaction that sees that happen, and that like, you know, really again up until maybe in the past 10 years or so, that like we've been almost what feels like allowed to as a society like talk about it frankly, which I think has led to a much greater like butting of heads of the force that is the state and the one that is, you know, the people.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is, to me at least, as a black man, I noticed a lot more outrage from people that would make excuses for the police in these police brutality cases. And again, my dad's a cop, so don't come for me because
I'll slap you down.
Yeah. So, but like, I think, like the people that were making excuses for cops in these scenarios, or excuses for people that were killing like unarmed black men, like, I mean, the whatever his name is, I'm trying to think of the guy that shot the kid in Florida. I can't even remember his name.
Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman.
Yeah. So I remember Trayvon Martin.
yeah. Sorry, the name of the scumbag, but yeah.
But I mean, I guess he wasn't a cop. He was like
just
a security
vigilante.
guard, or I'm sorry, not even a security guard. He was like a neighborhood watchman or some shit like that. But like, once the knee on the neck happened, there was just absolutely no excuse for that. Yeah. It wasn't a counterfeit bill. You couldn't say that. He didn't break any laws. And you like watched him like plead for his mother and a whole bunch of other things for 8 minutes. So like, people who had always given excuses for police officers and weren't convinced that it had some deep-seated racism involved with it, they had to, like, there was a reckoning. Either you're a racist and you're perfectly fine with black people dying, or you're not a racist, and now you have to come to terms with the fact that police aren't always good, and that's just it.
So how I don't want to get off in the weeds on the prosecutorial stuff, just because I think that's that's work for you, and we don't need to go through that right too heavily. Where am I trying to softly steer away but into something with this? Just I mean, these things I would imagine have some sort of implication in decisions that you make from your desk. Like they have to, like you have to take into account the entirety of a interaction that led to a charge prior to saying, I am going to move forward with this case and then defend it vigorously as a lawyer.
Yes, and I think that's really the purpose for any type of like racial diversity, really any kind of diversity in like any job, is you want to have a wide array of viewpoints on something so that you're not just going at it from one way. So that does come into consideration. Usually what it results in for me is did the state at the lower court prove this, or does it look like they gave enough evidence for this, and did this person, I mean, get convicted for it? So, I mean, at the end of the day, don't commit crimes.
Yeah.
Like, just don't do it. And if you get caught, I mean, certainly put up a fight.
But also shut up. Like just use the amendment that you're supposed to do to not incriminate yourself.
Yeah. Don't like roll over, push back. But like, you also know if you committed a crime, like you committed the crime. It would be in a perfect world. You commit the crime. You're just like the people like playing basketball, they commit the foul and they like raise their hand. Like you commit the crime in a perfect world. You're like, yeah, I did sell drugs to kids, and then you go to prison, and that's it. But of course, that doesn't happen, and people want to lie.
Is that part of the like when you do commit crime? Is the way out once you're within the court system more on the burden of proof to the state and the flaws inherent in the process that works you up to and through the conviction process? Or is it people's ability to conceal and hide and lie? Or is it like a balance between the two that kind of gets people out of, a charged and convicted situation when, there's like a clear commission of something?
So, in a vacuum,
which is all we're talking about here.
Well, because I'm positive that there are always biases. I mean, we're humans, so there are going to be biases. But in like a vacuum where this is all happening on paper, it's supposed to be much harder for the state to convict any person because they have to build all of the case from the ground up, right? And so that means that they need evidence. If the person, I mean, people have a right to a jury trial. So if the person wants that jury trial, they have to prove all of the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 people. I mean, at least in Illinois, it's 12 people. Yeah. Juries are different across the states. But so that's supposed to be very difficult. And really, all the defense has to do is poke at least one hole in that theory. And I mean, it can fall through.
So that's another good question, right? Because I'm when it comes to court proceedings, I'm illiterate as most people in this country are until they actually have to engage in the court system, right? I mean, it's our legal literacy in this country, with as consequential as the law is in this country to people's lives. It's problematic. So like in the state of Illinois, it has to be unanimous consent of a jury for conviction, or and it's not in other states, or how does that work? Well,
so I was talking about the numbers. It's not always exactly 12.
Okay.
From my understanding, from my memory at least, because I'm not trial level, so it's not like I'm seeing this all the time. But but from my understanding, it's not always 12 across the states. But also, from my understanding, it is a unanimous kind of, if any one person is like, no, then again, pretty sure, I don't want to say that's the case because I don't work there, but
this is not legal advice.
Yeah, definitely. None of this is legal advice. But,
in fact, this is the opposite of legal advice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has to be unanimous. So all 12 people have to believe that. And I'm sure there's some kind of working on each other, you know, if only one person is doing it. I'm sure there's some argument back and forth, but yeah, it has to be all 12.
Okay, all right, got it. I mean, that's just, you know, then that makes sense, right? Like, it has to be very clear to a lot of people through a lot of lenses, right? Because you talk about, you know, you mentioned that, you know, biases are not all the same and that, you know, none of this operates in a vacuum. So it's like, you know, somebody's got to be there to stand up and be like, I really think that there's something wrong here.
Yeah. And I mean, where I work, I mean, we're kind of reviewing all of this. So it's I mean, that's why we can have objections, and that's why defense attorneys, if they think anything's wrong, then they should object so that it can be preserved for the next round of things. But I mean, yeah, there should be someone that says something's wrong. I'm not tri-level, so I haven't really seen anything be wrong, just from my standpoint.
The how was your time in law school? Like what is all of that shit like, man?
Oh man. Okay, so I like to think that I'm a pretty mentally fortified person. I don't like to believe that I'm easily broken, you know. I might be. You try, but I like to believe that I'm not easily like mentally broken. But there were certainly times in law school that it was like, what am I doing? Because it's, especially the first year, it's kind of like almost like remaking you. Especially, like, for me at least, I was in pre-law, so I was already kind of reviewing cases, but what you're doing in pre-law is not what you're doing in law school. But anyone else other than, I can't remember what it's called, but there's another, like, law adjacent that's not, like, criminal law, or not, like, criminology. But like,
it's not the paralegal.
Paralegal, that's what it is. That's what I was thinking. But yeah, if you're in those two things, it prepares you all right. If you're in anything else, man, the learning curve on that is insane. What you're required to find, it's going to be difficult for the first year. If anyone's out there thinking about law school, do it. It's fun. I mean, after the fact, when you've accomplished it all, it's fun. But definitely while I was in it, I was doing so many things just because I was like, I don't know if I'm smart enough to be the top 10 of this class. So I have to show that I can multitask while I'm doing all this. And that did not help. I'm sure there were people that had better times doing less, but it's still bad. There's still curve in law school, and I don't know. So have you ever been graded like on a curve?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I don't know. Because I didn't really pay attention to how much I got graded in school. Man, I was a terrible student. Not gonna lie.
So was I. I just kind of like could put it together on a test, honestly. But no, it's on a curve. So the way that works is there can only be a certain number of high grades. So there can only be, I mean, I'm pretty sure there can only be one person, maybe two, that can get a 4.0 in the class. And then it like goes down in like a bell curve fashion.
So you're literally just put up against your peers that happen to be in that class.
Yeah. So you have to be smarter than everyone else.
Hold on. So law school is literally a competition.
Oh yeah. Every class. Yeah.
Holy
well, not
shit.
Every class. There are pass-fail classes, but almost every class.
So like, is it really imperative that you like, Can you fail out by just being like the very last person in like a class full of like very adept people or something?
I think it depends on whether the teacher is willing to give people like purely failing grades, because I think the way the curve works, if they put less people on top, they can put like less people on the bottom in that failing category, and so they can just be like very low in the class but not failing.
So are you also able to just really coast through law school if you nope, okay.
No.
I'm trying to find a way in and trying to find a way out here, seeing where that all
You are not allowed to like so I was used to not doing any like reading or homework really, and then just getting it covered on the test. If the homework grade was like a big deal, I'd do it, but that is not how it works in law school. And I mean, there's not a lot of homework, really. Like, by not a lot of homework, I mean not a lot of graded homework.
Yeah.
There is so much reading, and it's all like very dense.
Yeah.
So like a page, 2 pages, you'd think a regular book that is max 5 minutes of 2 pages is like max 5 minutes if you're really working on it. And that is not the case. It's like 5 minutes a page, and you might have not gotten everything you needed to get from that. And so it ends up being like one class. There's like a structure where basically I think the American Bar Association or whatever it is,
or whatever it is, that big important organization that oversees all this stuff.
Yeah, whatever they are. I'm pretty sure they like recommend like 3 hours to every 1 credit hour like of preparation. So if you have a 3 credit hour course, you're supposed to be taking 9 hours that week. And so if you're taking 15 hours, that means 45 hours of preparation. Yeah. And I certainly didn't do that. There's another thing that's also like scary for law school, and it's called the Socratic Method. And the way that works, I don't know if I haven't really seen Legally Blonde, but I know it happens in there. Have you seen Legally Blonde?
So my degree is in communication with a focus on rhetoric.
Okay. So you are aware of what this is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask me to describe it right now to you firsthand, but understand that as you start talking to it, I'll pick up on where our conversation is going.
Okay. All right. So for, I guess, your listeners, then, if they don't know, it's basically like you can just get called out. You can just get called out in the middle of class, and you're expected to present the information that you were asked. It's not like you're volunteering this information. There are certainly some teachers that'll be like, you can volunteer the information, but for the most part, you're on call, and a teacher might decide to ask you a question, or they might be one of the teachers that are like, you're it for the day. So all of the readings, you're explaining them all to the rest of the class. And I mean, sometimes the teacher says your participation is attached to this. Sometimes they say if you sign the attendance sheet, you are basically contracting that you've read the reading, and if you didn't read it, I'm going to go to the administration and report you, or I'm going to take away 2 of your absence or something like that. So there's always like, if they want you to read, you better read. But I mean, there were certainly some classes that didn't force us to be on that Socratic Method, and those were the last readings that I had on my day.
That's reasonable. So then the bar exam to like get into law school, it like is that more of a technical test, or is it more of like an ethics test?
Okay, so I'm gonna correct you just really quick, just because. So it's
or no, the bar exam is after. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, it is technically an exam that bars you from getting into law school if you don't get a good score, but it's called the Lsat.
There we go. Thank you.
And it is like purely logic based. They like purposefully put like big words and like dense material in the test so that it's like harder to read. But it's basically like really more of a time test than anything, because I would think anyone can get to the conclusion they need to get to given the amount of time, like given they were given an unlimited amount of time.
Yeah.
But it's like 35 minutes per sec, or at least it was until COVID happened and then it like switched around. But it's like 35 minutes per section, like 26 to 30 questions somewhere in there. Some of them are like based on like a 1 to 2 page reading that 1 to 1.5 page reading that you have to do like 6 or 7 questions on. Some of them are like a couple sentences to a paragraph that you have a question on. And some of them, like there's a section called logic games, which is basically what you would do if you have like a logic game on your phone or anything like that, where it's just like P and B are before C, but after E, and you have to do all that. And yeah, I think there's a bit of a debate on the LSAT and whether it's useful. I don't think it was very I think it's theater, honestly. Because you're like learning this information in law school. There isn't necessarily like a requirement to understand logic, because there were some very illogical people in my class and they passed the bar. So it's like, at the end of the day, what you're really learning from law school is how to research things and maybe like while someone's talking to you or while you're reading something, what the issues are in there. Nothing more, honestly.
So essentially how to do, how to read and then how to manage the stuff in real time when you're pressed for it.
Yes, and I'm sure you're going to go to the bar exam, so I might as well.
Oh shit! I mean, I don't really know where I'm going, man. I didn't expect to like go this deep into talk about lawyer stuff, but I'm just super interested now. And you have a really good, you do a really good job of explaining it in a very approachable manner. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
But so the bar exam, same issue. A lot of people, including myself, have a problem with the bar exam because it's not really determinative of how you're going to do in the legal profession, because it's requiring you to stuff as much information as you can remember in your brain to, I guess, just throw it up all over the computer. Really, you're not probably going to use a piece of paper for this unless you hate yourself. So it's asking you to memorize a whole bunch of information. I guarantee you, if you go to an experienced attorney and you ask them something outside of their field, they're not going to be able to tell you what it is, because you're not really remembering this stuff. I don't remember half of the stuff that I learned. Yeah. I just had to learn it because I had to learn it. If the bar exam was more focused on research, somehow, I don't know how they would do that. So I am critiquing it without having a solution. But if it was more focused on research and like an open universe kind of, here's a problem, give me an answer to it, and then based on that answer, whether it's satisfactory or not, I think that would be a better exam to see how you'd be as an attorney than strictly memorization, honestly.
Is there not really like a standards that comes to the ability to structure an argument and be persuasive and do all the performative aspects of lawyering that like we've come to know as lawyers through watching movies and shit? Like, is that not as much of the learning process as just memorize, read, regurgitate stuff is?
So there is an argument structure, and you're supposed to learn that like 1L year.
I object. I got it out of the way. I'm done. It's off my shoulder now.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry. Sustained. But so there is like an argument structure, and there are multiple terms: IRAC, IREAC, CREAC, crack. It's like issue, rule, explanation, analysis, conclusion. There are different, sometimes it's like conclusion. Sometimes there's no explanation. It's all the same thing. But
I react, then I crack. Oh no, I'm an egg.
Yes, Humpty Dumpty. But
turns out I also roll.
But I mean, so like at the end of the day, you're supposed to learn that, and the main purpose of it isn't really that you have to do that in your legal profession. It's just for ease of reading, for the judge, for the professor. So, I mean, it's so they can spend less time on whatever it is. Ultimately, if you didn't organize it the way that they force you to organize it, they could still get that information. And I can tell you, as a practicing attorney, not every attorney organizes it in the way they're supposed to, and they learned from law school. So
why would somebody do that to themselves? That just seems like that makes it more difficult for them to win a case. But is it like a balance of like time versus attention here then, or what's that?
Well, so maybe they just didn't like learn it properly.
Okay.
I mean, that could be one thing.
It's just how they live their career now.
Well, and it could be like how you adjust things. Like I know in law school we were taught that we needed to like provide like a statement of the facts explaining the case. And I know that where I work now, you can forego that statement if you think that the opposing side gave a generally good explanation of the facts. So that's like already one thing that I'm not giving facts. I certainly give some facts, but like not in the placement that I was supposed to put it in law school. So it is different. And I think that's now SIU, I think, does a pretty good job with this, like giving practical experience. But I think there is still a difference between academic lawyerly stuff and lawyerly stuff, like citations. And I guess if you're thinking about law school, if you're in law school, you know that citations are like a big deal. They force you to do it in a certain format and all this stuff with Blue Book. But in like real life, they're like, and by real life, I mean the working
Court
professional
system.
world.
Yeah.
Your bosses are just kind of like, yeah, I mean, as long as the judge gets it, as long as they understand where to go, it should be fine.
Yeah.
There are certainly some judges that are like anal about this, but I haven't met one.
Yeah.
So
Probably because they're not trying to mess around any more than they have to with stuff too.
yeah.
I mean, I also can't imagine what the burden on the court system is like. Like before, bad enough. Now, holy shit.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm foreseeing, and I told my girlfriend Savannah this, when all of like these courts shutting down or postponing cases happened. I was foreseeing that there might be like a speedy trial argument that starts like becoming very abundant. Because you have a right to a speedy trial.
Yeah.
And all of this COVID stuff, an anomaly, but all of this COVID stuff
Doesn't change the Constitution.
I mean, yeah. And so I think there might be something in that. And I haven't really had to do a speedy trial case yet. I'm working on one right now, but it's not in the same way, in the same vein. But I think there's something in like maybe the Illinois Constitution or like a statute that provides for special circumstances. And so I think that's what's happening right now. But I would not be surprised if after COVID's done, we saw in the United States Supreme Court a speedy trial issue. And honestly, the Supreme Court will not only be deciding whether or not COVID can postpone the right to a speedy trial or not, they'll also be deciding essentially whether to release millions of potentially criminals, alleged criminals, just releasing them, because if your speedy trial isn't met, I'm almost positive you're just let out.
Yeah.
So
That's, man, there's so much going on with this court system, man. Yeah. I mean, and just imagine a court system in which, all the petty offense type stuff that really doesn't, harm or threaten society, right? That all of a sudden, now we're so out of whack on that the things that actually do harm and threaten individuals within a society are just brushed by the wayside.
Yeah. And so I think when you say things like that, I think at least what I'm imagining is like,
please tell me what you're imagining.
Well, what I'm imagining is like smoking weed or like possessing weed or something like that.
Absolutely.
That's not a big deal. I think luckily Illinois recreational marijuana, thank God, because like I've been saying for years that would be like a great source of income. Yeah. For Illinois.
Well, and and now we're even. I mean, there's a bill that was just introduced. Maybe it's this week. Maybe it was last week. Maybe it's coming in next week. It's sometime in near the point in time that we are living and talking in right now. Where now we're not just talking about the legalization of recreational cannabis through blah, 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 and whatever else, but just like completely legalizing possession of cannabis and none of this bullshit about how you got to carry it around and how you got to treat it and whatever else, and just like, let it go, man.
That would be interesting.
That's where we're headed. Or at least that's the conversation where we're headed to. Whether or not it gets the votes is the next question, but, we're moving in a pretty progressive way, in a pretty like, conceptually equitable way, understanding the disparities of the war on drugs thus far.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. I'm not sure how people will react to that, because I personally believe that's a good idea. But that might also reduce income for, police stations, counties in general, because they won't be able to just be ticketing people.
Yeah, but at the same time, what a bunch of bullshit that enforcement of the law is seen as a fucking standard of revenue for the state.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is sickening.
Yes.
Right? That is a key component to the concept of the prison industrial complex. That's the industry part of the prison industrial complex.
Yes, if you want to get into this, please be my guest, because I am a proponent for like a percentage based fine system.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because like if you're rich and you get $100 speeding ticket, who cares?
Yeah, it was never a crime to begin with.
And if you're poor and you get $100 speeding ticket, you might not be able to eat for a week or a month. So I think percentage based fine system, good idea. I think there are a lot of financial barriers that we have, but just in general, I'm not like a huge proponent for capitalism. Honestly.
I'm just gonna be real with you. Like, it's not. Listen, man, we've lived in our age people, anybody that's 40 and under, has come of age in a system where every shit end of the capitalist stick we're the ones stuck with.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Like even you, who is we'll say somewhat accomplished, relatively young, capable, intelligent lawyer.
Keep going, please.
Who is I'm not done yet. Who has made decisions like not having kids, which would cause you financial stress, and other things around that, I'm sure still don't find it easy to navigate the intricacies of our financial system, even though you should, presumably be one of the people that's in one of the better financial situations of our generation.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I personally I hate billionaires. That's number one. I hate billionaires, kind of hate millionaires, but like I can't really hate them because some of them are like artists. But like, but like, I don't like that schools are being run like businesses right now.
No.
I think that is absolutely terrible. There was this, I don't know. Do you have Netflix?
Yes.
So have you seen the Varsity Blues documentary yet?
No, I've not. But didn't that like just come out?
It did.
Okay,
and I saw it immediately.
Good. Very good. Very good. Very good.
But it's just like the idea of these institutions that are supposed to be built to teach people things operating just strictly on like income-based things, and being, I mean, essentially bribed to let people into their school. And the fact that, I mean, I'm just so insulted at the fact that, like, my parents, not to say that they did, but my parents could easily work through school and pay off their schooling. Just
Did you just call your parents lazy? Is that what I
No,
just heard? I'm
not
not
at
going
all.
to say that they worked. No.
not at all. But like, they could have easily worked
Yeah.
their way through school and paid it off.
Yeah.
And if you work your way through school right now, minimum wage, assuming,
Yeah.
was that like a 20th of your end bill?
Yeah.
Maybe a 15th. Like, you still owe so much money. I don't understand why this stuff isn't being forgiven. And I think that's part of the draw in of like public interest stuff is this loan forgiveness possibility, but it's like 10 years.
But it's what I don't get, man. There are so many things because we have let capitalism run a freaking muck, right? Like and I describe myself to folks as a transactionalist, right? Like I am interested in the exchange between individuals that creates economy, that creates commerce, right? That existed before cash, will exist after cash, exists now in the form of cash, right? But like what we're doing now is a transaction, right? And it's creating something of value that we will then in turn transact with other people by sharing it through digital spaces so that people can consume this and then they may transact it. Now, all this is just a knowledge-based conversation, right? But people get charged for knowledge all the time. That's what schools are.
Yeah.
People get paid to transact knowledge to oftentimes younger individuals, but not always, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get kind of where you're coming from on that, and I kind of went real far off on one side of this, right? But back onto the initial concept of like, yeah, when somebody hits $999,999,999.99, that, you know, just like in The Legend of Zelda, when Link would get too many, rupees piled up, that they would just start popping out when you would try and pick up more.
Yeah. There is a limit. You can't have any more rupees. We should do that. We should do that to billionaires. You can't have any more rupees. I'm sorry.
It's my favorite meme on the internet. It really is.
I mean, we should, like, it doesn't, and they just sit on it like a dragon. They don't use it.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because, and I was talking to somebody about this just a couple days ago, that wealth does not equal economy, right? Wealth is stagnant capital. An economy is moving capital, right? And those are, again, two very different things. Now, stagnant capital in mass is power because simply the threat of use of capital is power, right? But like the flow of capital and the exchange of capital and the cycle of capital in and out and up and down and, you know, buy and exchange and work and goods and service and blah, 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 blah. Where am I going? I just talk so much in a circle that I just like my anger overrides my my actual like thought process here, and I'm talking about the difference between that like that's the democratization of transactions, whereas again, you know, hoarding wealth forces people to transact with a single entity, organization, whatever it may be. Right. That's why vertical integration becomes a problem when you have companies that control, you know, entire supply chains from the initiation of natural capital to the sale of a refined product to an end consumer. Right. And that's a 15, 25 step process that covers activity of thousands of people as things move across the globe. And I'm just making myself really angry right now about how we as a generation have been exploited and dumped on. And it's not to say that generations before us haven't been exploited themselves with these things, because there are plenty of people who have been like burned by this system. But it's like, what's next? What the hell are we actually going to do that makes sense?
Yeah, but I do think the difference between, and I don't know about Gen X, I'm not going to come at them.
No.
But I think the difference between like baby boomers and millennials and Gen Z, I think millennials and Gen Z really will be like the generation that's like, look, we got exploited because they got exploited because they got exploited. Yeah. We're not going to do that to you guys.
Yeah.
We're going to try to make this fair because we hated that.
My worry on the other end of that is that simply the number of people doing the exploiting shrinks to a very consolidated number of very capable millennials and Gen Z folks who are like a Mark freaking Zuckerberg that, you know, now we're talking about real vertical integration. Ha ha ha. There's only one person who now rules the world.
It's very possible. And I mean, I think at Citizen United, sometimes I get my case names mixed up.
Let's talk about Citizens United.
But that's the one that made corporations
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck Citizens United. Like the idea that you can the corporations are not people.
No,
that's just
not.
Number one.
They're pieces of paper that people have conceived in their mind.
I hate lobbying. I really like, it's ultimately that I just really don't like capitalism very much. But like lobbying, Citizens United, those things are why we have people like Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
Or Josh Hawley or whatever his name is.
Yeah, no,
Mitch McConnell.
Yep.
These people who are like, look, I'm getting paid and I don't really have that many morals, so I don't really care. I don't care what you like. On my podcast the other day, I had on a friend of mine, and I was saying to him, if we had no morals, especially with how liberal we are and how much we've talked about this stuff, if we had no morals and we just flipped it and started talking super duper like feel good conservatively about all of this stuff, like we'd get paid like, what's her name? The black conservative that's like, Candace Owens. That's her name.
Go. Yep.
She was discriminated against in like college or something like that. And it was like a big deal. And then all of a sudden she's working for like Ben Shapiro and talking about how race isn't a thing. And it's like, I mean, if you have no morals, I'm sure you get paid very well for not having morals.
Yeah. It's weird how that works, huh? Money corrupts. No, it's like power corrupts, absolutely. But money, if money is power, then money corrupts, absolutely.
I think money corrupts, absolutely. The church. Continue. Let's go on to something that's not that, because I know that'll piss off a lot of your people.
Caught that left field fly ball, man. No, so let's kind of close out here. We just got a little bit more time. This has been a really fun conversation, man. I've spent. Right, so like I was really rocking and rolling, and then got COVID in January, and then like came back, and like the first run of this, like I had like 11 podcasts that were, political in nature, right? Platforming a bunch of people during this local election, because there's the normal interactions that could occur in public settings and the face-to-face and the getting to know people just wasn't going to happen. So like this was a way to kind of bridge that gap. It just kind of made sense. And so now I'm like getting back in the groove of having just regular conversations that like, I don't have to go in and be like, okay, this is, you should say this one thing about this one topic that we're here to, but also let's spend another 45 minutes exploring you. Like this has just been a nice, like earnest conversation about whatever the hell interesting thing we wanted to talk about, and turns out there's just a lot of interesting shit to talk about law.
Yeah.
But that part of the underpinning of your podcast, but part of the underpinning of your podcast just being just general conversation and the back and forth of argument and conversation. What are some of the biggest hiccups that you've experienced in like launching and maintaining a podcast? Because you're at episode 50 now, you said, right?
Yeah, somewhere. I think I might be like 49, maybe 51. Yeah. So I mean, clearly scheduling is like a huge hiccup. Recently I've become a solo host of my podcast. I was a co-host, but my co-host is having a baby. Like they have things going on. So like we both like mutually were like, maybe you should step back because you're probably not going to have time. So scheduling was a huge one. Now, not as much. Audio quality, because I have it's like a remote podcast. So I don't have anyone in the room with me. It's mainly just over Zoom. Yeah. Thank you for that Zoom information, by the way. Yeah, no, maybe the audio quality will improve.
Here's the thing, man. I've been trying to figure out stuff for work for myself, right? And I'm gonna end up putting together some sort of media piece that connects with people statewide, and I'm really trying to figure out what is the best, because there's a lot of give and take, right? Video quality, specifically for what I'm doing, video quality. At some point in time, possibly for what you're doing, video quality, audio quality, like the actual compression and like your file outputs on the other side of it, just ease of use. There's all these things that go into it from like a remote podcast standpoint. Like it's much more difficult than just that. So I've been researching that a lot and happen to know like you can download those individual audio tracks from each person with a click of a button in Zoom.
Yeah, and there's also like, internet access for both people, all that stuff. What other problems have I had? I mean, maybe running out of something to say, but usually like I am diagnosed ADHD. So like if I cling on something, it's going to go that way no matter if I want it to or not. So there have been episodes where we were lamenting, in fact, targeted ads and how you can just say like, oh yeah, I need another coffee filter, and then all of a sudden Amazon is showing you coffee filters, Facebook has ads for coffee filters, your Google browser has coffee filters on the bottom.
It's terrifying.
And you're like, how did you get this information?
Because it heard you say it.
Yeah.
It literally picked up your voice.
And that's insane.
And we're all just cool with it. We're all just like letting it happen. Here's the man. I first noticed that 6 or 7 years ago. I was on a road trip out with a buddy of mine. We were at the Hoover Dam, and we were talking about something. And the thing that I was talking about popped up on my phone screen like 5 minutes later. It was the first instance I'd ever had experiencing that. First time ever. And it was terrifying.
It is. And I think, so we recently, my girlfriend Savannah and I switched over.
I like how you keep saying, my girlfriend Savannah and I, making sure it's a good presentation.
I don't want to just we, and then that could be like some people refer to themselves as we. That's weird. But so we recently switched over from like Echoes to like the HomePod stuff. I don't know if it's better or worse, but I know that I'm not getting ads about what I'm saying anymore. so that's great news. But in that episode, we went from targeted ads to what utensil is best.
Yeah.
And so his was forks and mine was knives, just because I think knives are more versatile. There are more knives than there are forks. I don't want to rehash it, but if I could have any,
I don't want to know what you think about that shit, Nathan. I just want to let you know. Okay.
Well, okay. So what's your favorite? What is the most useful utensil you'd say?
Shit, man. Like, are we talking strictly about eating, or are we talking about like in general usefulness.
So I was viewing it as like in general, and I think he was viewing it as eating, and I think that's where we had issues. But we'll say in general for right now.
And this is what happens, right, when you have a podcast with lawyers, is that like you come up with these like, you know, the underpinnings of well, what's the context of it, right? And then your argument revolves around that, which is cool and interesting. And like, how do you lawyerify eating utensils? But you guys managed to do it.
We did. Well, he was like, if you want to be on if you're on a desert island, which utensil are you picking? I was like, a knife. Clearly.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna go around a desert island being like, sure am glad I got this fork.
Exactly. It just makes more sense.
Yeah.
And then he was like, well, what about in a home setting? And I was like, I'm gonna stick to my guns here and say knife. Just because I had to stick there at that point. But I think the beginning of our podcast, we were like hyper focused on arguing. And that led to like some of our arguments being like half-hearted or like multiple concessions. And then I've moved more to like a conversation and if an argument comes up, it comes up. I know our first episode ever was on meatloaf because I will
the singer
argue
or the thing.
The food. And you're like the third person who said that. Everyone else knows it's food.
Because meatloaf is your favorite food?
I hate meatloaf.
Oh, it's the opposite of your favorite food.
Oh
okay.
my God, I hate meatloaf so much. It is so disgusting. And everyone says, well, you haven't had the right meatloaf. And I'm like, you're wrong. I've had various meatloafs and they've all sucked. But so that was the first one. And I'm pretty sure I likened meatloaves to like Satan in some way. I don't know. But
I want a bumper sticker that just says, I have had various meatloaves.
I mean, to me, they suck. Like, it's listen to the first the first episode of the podcast, and you'll know all of my very real feelings on meatloaf. But yeah, no, I think it's fun, and I will definitely have you on, and we'll argue about something ridiculous, or we'll just have another conversation.
Perfect. And that'll do it for this conversation. Episode 48 of the WTF Carbondale podcast. Michael Lennix. You can find him on the internet with his own podcast, Tipping the Scales. That's, like maybe on Apple or Google or something. Just find it. And eventually I'll get my claws into him and you'll be able to find it in a few more places because everybody needs a little help sometimes. I wouldn't be here without the help of many other people pushing me this direction, and sometimes shit rolls downhill. So that being said, have a good one, folks. Whatever that one may be.